Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast for August 24th, 2014. This is episode 79, and I'm JD Duran.
I'm Blake Pertuzit.
No guest on the show this week, Blake. It's just going to be the two hosts holding down the fort, which is going to be a lot of fun. And I know you were a big fan of the first Sin City, so I'll be looking forward to hearing your thoughts on Sin City, A Dame to Kill For, which is going to be the main review we're going to be talking about this week. And going off of that, we're also going to be talking about our top 3 movie dames that we would kill for if it was up to us. And I did kind of limit that for us because that is a very wide range. And because this is a comic book movie, it's an action movie as well, I kind of narrowed it down to just comic book and action movies. So those are kind of what we were looking at. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the top 3 segment. But that should be a fun conversation.
Right, and I actually also narrowed it down a little bit further than that to just dames that I would commit assault for.
There you go. So we'll talk more about that in the top 3 segment. And, of course, we'll finish up the show as usual with films we got to see over the last week. But before we get into any of that, Blake, how was your week, man?
Oh, up and down, really busy. A lot of work stuff, some more medical issues. I was talking about a little bit earlier how I pretty much can't see anything out of my right eye at this point here. Yeah,
had a rough year, man.
Yeah, I know. It's tough. Anyway, but like I said, saw a couple friends last night. And a buddy of mine said to me that, well, as long as it's not pink eye, I was like, no, it's just retinal bleeding, no big deal. Don't worry about that. You're safe. It's all on the inside. Like, thanks, buddy.
Yeah,
appreciate that. So anyway, no, it's all just. It's funny to say, but this week's been kind of a blur.
Good one.
And I just made that up, too. You get that for free. That's what you get with the show here. Off-the-cuff humor.
Yeah. Well, and it's good to have you back. I know you were gone last week, but it's good to get you back on the show, man.
Right, and I'm glad to be back here. Sometimes, my stupid life kind of just bounces around. So
Sure. No, I get it, man.
Yeah.
My week was a little frustrating in some ways, but despite the frustration, it was still a good week overall. I had some great time with the wife over the weekend, and we finally got to discuss Boyhood on our latest extra film segment. I don't know if any of you guys have got a chance to listen to it yet, but it's the longest extra film we've ever had.
They're still listening to it.
It was a little long for an extra film. It was about the length of our normal main shows. But we had an amazing discussion with Hyro from the True Romance podcast. It was
I guess
a lot of fun.
For a movie that took 12 plus years to make, it deserves a little,
it deserves
discussion.
Time. Yeah, and Brendan and I talked a lot about discussing just that film on that show because we wanted to spend a lot of time on it. And so I didn't really hold any time restrictions. We just had a lot to talk about. A lot of layers there. It was fun. So anyway, definitely go and check that out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But we have Sin City, A Dame to Kill For to talk about, Blake. So let's get into it.
And here we go.
You're listening to the InSession Film Podcast. This is episode 79. Blake, Sin City is where you go in with your eyes open, or you don't come out at all.
Well, JD, it's also a place where you go in with your wallet open and also come out with nothing at all.
What did it feel like?
What?
Murdering an innocent man. I just want to know what it felt like. It must have been beautiful.
What are you talking about, innocence?
I knew I could count on you. Sex always made you stupid, ready to believe anything. You've just made me a very rich woman. Do me one last favor, lover. Stay still long enough for me to blow your brains out.
All right, Sin City, A Dame to Kill For is directed by Frank Miller and Robert Rodriguez, and it stars Mickey Rourke, Jessica Alba, Josh Brolin, Eva Green, and a few other people as well. I'll toss it to you first, Blake. I know that you were a fan of the first film, as was I.
Right.
But what did you think about Sin City, A Dame to Kill For?
Well, it's weird to think about it, that it's literally been gestating for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
2005 was when the first one came out.
Yeah, it's been a long time, yeah.
A couple of different people that were attached to star before, the whole Ava Green thing happened. I thought she was really, really good in the movie. She was awesome. And she's naked for a lot of it, so that's even better. She's pretty hot. I'm not gonna lie about that. We know that Jessica Alba is never going to do that. That's one of her things. And that's fine. She was good as well for what it was. I like the story aspect of it. I liked some of the angles of the story here, although a couple of the chapters didn't really flow together as well. It wasn't as cohesive as a story as I think that the first film was.
Sure, yeah.
And again, I read through some of the graphic novels early on, like that the first film was based on here. I wasn't familiar with this story at all. I think that some of the characters were underused. The casting was still good, even for some of the small parts. There are little places like Christopher Maloney and Jeremy Piven as the couple of cops that were investigating everything there. I thought actually were pretty good for what they were used for. Sure. Ray Liotta had a cool little part for like one little scene there. So some of those little scenes they still used good actors for, and I really appreciate that for what we're doing with this kind of a film here. I thought Josh Brolin was actually pretty decent compared to a lot of stuff we've seen him in here lately, which kind of a good redemptive quality.
Sure,
because I've been waiting
We've
for
talked
him
a lot
to,
about that, yeah.
Yeah, I've been waiting for him to kind of get back into things here. I'm not going to get into spoilers or anything like that. I was kind of waiting for a couple of changes to happen there in the film that we didn't see that are not really going to ruin it for me here.
Sure.
But no, I mean, it wasn't as cohesive as I think as the stories it could have been here. But for what it was, I still pretty well enjoyed it. I thought Mickey Rourke was just as good or better than he was in the first one, though. I love Mickey Rourke in that role anyway. He's absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I would agree, yeah.
So for the most part, I enjoyed it pretty well here. It wasn't perfect by any means here, but I don't have the gripes about it that I do have a lot of other movies this summer here. It's kind of a shame that it bombed so bad at the box office.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
It opened at like number 8.
Yeah,
way down there. Although on the good side, though, Guardians is back on top there instead of those stupid
so
turtles. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
but again, for the most part, I enjoyed it.
Well, it sounds like you enjoyed it a little bit more than me. I will say, though, there are good parts to this film. I think it was just more of a big disappointment because I feel like there was a lot of potential with this film, and it just didn't quite live up. Mm-hmm. As you were kind of saying, like it wasn't quite as cohesive as the first film. It didn't necessarily pack the punch, no pun intended, as the first film either. But visually, it's still great. If you like this style of filmmaking, it's obviously not as creative or inventive as it was when the first one came out. But with this style, I still thought it was pretty good. Mm-hmm. And I think what was even better this time around than the first time is the use of color, which I thought was done extremely well. It felt more vibrant. It was able to pop out a little bit more. And I thought that was used really, really great. You were kind of talking about Eva Green's character a little bit, and she is naked a lot, which we'll get to here in a second. But even with like the colors surrounding her, I thought all of that looked really great visually.
Oh yeah, the use of shadow in a lot of those scenes as well, and water and texture, I think, really helped out too in the styling.
Yeah, it was very, very intentional. With the Eva Green character specifically, her eyes were very green, and they popped out really well. And I think the use of that was very intentional because her character is very much this seductive mistress, right? Yep. Where that is her power. She goes around seducing these men sexually for her own gain, and her eyes were very much her tool in making that happen. And I thought that was really great. She also wears this blue coat, which I'm not exactly sure if that's supposed to represent anything, but it was really funny because my wife turned to me in the middle of the film and was like, maybe that's just the only piece of clothing that she owns, and that's why it's color.
I don't know. I was kind of thinking, devil in a blue dress myself, to an extent there. When most of the color that pops out in that movie there is red or explosions or things like that, I thought blue really stood out to separate her
Sure.
Again, in the graphic novels, there was no color, of course.
Sure.
So to have that, again with that styling, to kind of have it pop out there on a film, nobody's going to really want to watch a full black and white film anymore here. But I think the styling of the way that was done was really well. So
yeah. No, I would
maybe that's part of it.
I would agree with that. I thought visually it was very good, like I said. But for me, a lot of the middle of this film is very muddled. It's very dull. It gets kind of boring in some instances. And it was mostly with the Eva story arc and the Josh Brolin storyline. It was that part that wasn't, it didn't quite grab me as much as some of the other ones. I will say, though, on the surface, there is some interesting themes there, going back to the whole idea that women have this power over men sexually and the use of that for their own gain. And we do kind of see that with the dynamics between Eva Green and Josh Brolin's character. But I think that gets dragged out. It gets to be too much. I feel like it just hits us too much over the head with that I didn't necessarily have to have, especially when you bring in the Christopher Maloney character, who was just another person that she was there to use her power against. All of that felt like it was just adding to this idea, and it felt like it was just smacking us in the face with it, and I didn't necessarily need all of that. I think it muddled and convoluted the story a little bit, even though I think the idea surrounding it all is kind of interesting, and visually it does look great. I mean, she looks fantastic in the film, but that storyline was as interesting as some of the other ones in the film. It didn't grab me like the other ones did.
Well, I don't know that it grabbed me. I mean, I can see where you're coming from. Maybe not totally necessary. I can see where the point that it's making, that it's not just the lowlifes out there, but honest married men and police officers and things like that. That this woman has the ability to get to control.
Sure.
I think was kind of part of that, and of course, the whole idea was that she wanted Dwight dead, and that was the whole point. That was her best way to try to get him. He was holed up in Old Town here, and I mean, that's the only way you're going to try to get in there and take that out. So I think that it still served a purpose, but it could have been dropped out there. But I still enjoyed it to actually see a couple of other somewhat recognizable names and faces on screen for a little while anyway.
Sure. I guess it was just a little bit disappointing because the whole premise of the film, or at least the name of it, is based off of that section of it, and that was the least interesting to me.
Yeah.
Although there were some good elements, don't get me wrong. I mean,
Right.
I like Brolin in that role as well. But one of my favorite parts of the film was the Joseph Gordon-Levitt storyline, which I thought was done pretty well.
Yeah.
One, it was one of the shorter ones, and perhaps maybe that's why I was interested. But I think it was subtle. I think it was also one of the less violent ones. And I think it went back to this idea that it wasn't necessarily about killing his enemy as much as it was destroying his legacy.
Oh, yeah.
And the way you go about that. It was that journey, I think, was fascinating. And perhaps at the beginning he was a little bit cocky, and he knew that. And about halfway through he realized, okay, maybe that wasn't the best approach to the situation. But in the end, I think he knew there was one outcome, and that outcome to me I thought was fascinating.
Oh yeah, that he knew that again, like you said, there's one outcome there, and that's still a win, honestly, for him, where that was coming from there. But I don't know. I really have grown to like him more as an actor. I think that especially this character, he plays it so well and does it, to a T, as far as what you would imagine that character being there, all cocky and everything in the early part of it here, and kind of, coming back at the end here. But yeah, that was the more, what's funny, because like that part, I know, okay, the original graphic novel, It Was a Dame to Kill For, was one of the books in there. That's what this is based on.
Sure.
That's the bigger overarching story there. But I think the more powerful, the more poignant part of the story here was everything that surrounded Senator Rourke. Because when I went through that storyline there, and of course the whole thing with Nancy and Marv as well, went back to that. We had a few scenes, Bruce Willis reprising his character as John Hardigan. And that was the bigger, what was the opening and close of the film there. Like you said, the middle part here was more of the Eva Green and Josh Brolin storyline there, and that kind of where it fell apart a little bit. So at least I think that it opened and closed well. Yeah.
Speaking of the opening, I do want to get back to some of the other stuff with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but the opening was, we were introduced to the Marv character again, but didn't he die in the first one?
Yeah, but the thing is, with these, This story, it was actually the movie itself is a sequel because it came out later on, but
Is this
some of
more
those storylines are it jumps around. It's kind of, I mean, we're looking at Robert Rodriguez here, so feel like Tarantino's
Sure,
involved
no,
as well.
yeah, I
Imagine
get that. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, part of it's before and after. I mean, the Marv storyline from the first film actually took place a fair time after this whole story here.
Interesting.
Because we go back. It's weird to look at it because look at in the first film here you have Nancy Callahan, Jessica Alba's character, when she's a little girl, and goes the whole thing with Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
And where he's in
Sure.
jail now, she's an adult, of course, here and all that. So it kind of jumps around.
And her story
a lot.
arc is definitely after the first film.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the Marv story that was in the first Sin City film, as far as with him and Goldie and all that kind of stuff, that was actually at a time after this here.
Interesting. I guess I was confused by that
Yeah.
because I don't think they ever made that clear, and I'm not familiar with the comics, so
Right, and a lot of people aren't. So because
Yeah.
it was kind of a not as well known. We're not talking about like a Marvel or a DC thing.
Yeah,
here. It was kind of.
I mean, and I liked the character. I thought he
Oh,
was
yeah.
used fine. He just kind of shows up in a bunch of different places and kicks ass as you would want him to
but,
do. Which,
exactly. So it
Yeah.
serves its purpose for me. It's like Dwight said, like, so what if I'm using him?
yeah, exactly. So it's
And
just
it's
a little
perfect.
bit
He's like, I'm going to get him just drunk enough to do what I
Yeah.
ask him to do here. And I think he played it perfect.
Yeah.
But it's funny because that's how I really see Mickey Rourke in general anymore. Ever since he got, all plastic surgery and ended up kind of messed up looking.
Sure.
I mean, he just is kind of that guy. I mean, he plays it perfect, though.
Yeah.
Seemed the same way as like in The Wrestler, anyway, just a big bruiser. There were some good action scenes with that. I liked the fight scene between him and Manute, the character Dennis Haysbert played in this film. It was originally Michael Clark
Yeah.
Duncan.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good little fight scene there. It was fun. So, But yeah, the timeline kind of jumps all over the place.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up because I was a bit confused on that,
Right.
and that makes sense now. But going back to that scene that you were talking about with Brolin and Marv in the car,
Mm-hmm.
it is this interesting idea, though, that they kind of play on of people using other people, especially in their pursuit of women.
Mm-hmm.
I think is interesting. I think it's something I've seen play out in my life. I think it plays out in a lot of people's lives because that pursuit, and again, I can only speak from a guy's perspective.
Sure.
But I think that pursuit of women, it does kind of have this trance on us where we will do whatever it takes, I guess, to obtain that or to be in that pursuit. And sometimes that means you'll ask your friends to do things that maybe they didn't necessarily want to do, but they do it because you kind of talk them into it.
Yeah, that happens. And then again, the same way as that, alcohol plays a part, too, sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Especially after drinking a bottle of vodka.
Yeah. Phew.
Yeah. Another thing, going back to the Joseph Gordon-Levitt stuff too, is while there's a lot of violence in this film, and in some ways I feel like there's more violence than the first one, but while it's not as graphic as some of the other violence in the film, it was almost some of the most disturbing parts of the movie.
Yeah.
But it really led to this amazing scene that he had with Christopher Lloyd, which
That was good.
was kind of funny.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was great. Yeah.
I love the fact that he's like, whatever you got, kid. And he was like, $40. Well, then you get $40 worth. It's like, well, yeah, that's what happens when you find a, back alley doctor at midnight.
Sure.
Oh, that was funny though. But again, Christopher Lloyd was perfect for that part too. I guess.
Oh yeah, amazing.
I love him.
Well, let me ask you about the Nancy part. I feel like she gets to do more here than in the first film.
Oh, yeah.
I do like the idea though that John Hartigan comes back. He plays a bit of a pivotal role, even though it is kind of subtle and he's not in there a whole lot. But we get to see a little bit more of a deeper look at Nancy and kind of the after effects of what happened to Hartigan in the first film.
Right.
And you kind of see her fall into this depression and despair, and we kind of see her sadness kind of overtake her. And where a lot of this film talks about having, these mistresses, for Nancy, revenge becomes her mistress.
Well, revenge and daddy issues.
And daddy issues.
I have
Absolutely.
to say, come on.
But both of those things kind of come together for what I felt like maybe it was a little bit fast, but I loved seeing her go through that arc of having to deal with the sadness, of having to deal with what happened, and then going for that revenge. And those battle sequences at the end I thought was pretty fun.
Yeah, it was nice that character had more to do this time around, definitely. And, wasn't just, eye candy like before for the most part. You definitely saw a lot of that, revenge and depression and alcoholism and things like that went through.
Sure.
A lot of different things that she went through at that point here. It went a little bit crazy, obviously. Got to keep an eye out for women like that.
Sure.
But, yeah, I mean, it was definitely much more entertaining to see her do that. You really wouldn't have expected to see, her and Marv going on a tear on a couple of motorcycles and killing a bunch of people.
I know.
When all you've seen her before is just, is this stripper.
Sure.
So, yeah, it was more interesting here. It was, again, probably better than the majority of the movie. Anyways, more entertaining at least.
Yeah, I thought it was great. And again, it was good to see Marv didn't really care exactly what was going on with these people. He just wanted to team up and kick some ass with some people.
Exactly. That's all he does.
Yeah,
So.
This is good stuff. All right, well, any other final thoughts, and what grade would you give Sin City: A Dame to Kill for?
Not really any more final thoughts here. Again, I liked a lot of individual different pieces on there. There wasn't any, one solid thoroughfare here of the film that I really can latch onto here. It was more of a collection of scenes, but for the most part, I found it entertaining.
Sure.
So I would give this film a full C cup. I mean, from... Oh, yeah.
We did see a lot of those.
Yeah. For the fact alone that when we get some boobies in there, I'm going to up it a little bit here. But yeah, it's a C for me. It's not perfect. It's not as good as the first one was. Although, it's some of the other reviews that I've read out there, they say, well, it's just more of the same here. Well, I happen to like the same. I liked the first one a lot. Sure. It was a lot more of that. Visuals were a little better because technology has changed a little bit by this time here, 10 years down the road. But it just didn't really all pull together as an overall film. Like if this was like a series on HBO or something like that was like half an hour or an hour episodes, I can see them digesting that into the stories a whole lot easier than trying to combine a whole bunch of them. The first movie was a handful of the different books all thrown together to a movie because they all somehow kind of connected in the way that Tarantino universe works.
Yeah.
I have to use that word there. I mean, it's an adjective at this point in the film industry.
It is, yes.
But yeah, that's so. I think that they tried to make it a little bit too long and not have the stories that really connected as well. But
yeah, I think one of the things that you kind of sparked in my mind when you were talking about kind of the nudity, and I know you're kind of joking with the whole C cup thing, but I will say while Eva Green's character is naked a lot, I was actually perfectly okay with it, and I never felt it was gratuitous because of her seductiveness. It was very intentional. In fact, Brolin at one point says it's theatrical, like she does it to kind of put people in a trance and seduce these guys, for her own will or whatever. So I was perfectly okay with it. It was never really too much for me. As far as other final thoughts, as we kind of talked about, I really liked the Joseph Gordon-Levitt stuff. I thought it was great. The Nancy stuff at the end was fantastic. The middle part to me was just a little bit too dull and boring. But there is some interesting things going on with the Ava character, with the dynamics surrounding her sexual prowess and the dynamics that blends with the Josh Brolin character. There is some stuff there. It just kind of fizzles out and isn't quite as engaging the entire time as some of the other stuff happening around the film. If you like the violence, I think you're going to like a lot of that stuff going on here. I think a lot of the action sequences are well shot. The Marv character is awesome. Mickey Rourke is fantastic in that role, as we've talked about. And, the visual elements, I think it works here as well. I do think the cinematography is pretty good, as we've talked about. But the big thing I really took away from this movie, and I guess you could say as the first one too, is Sin City is just a place you don't want to go to because it will devour you like none other. So, in fact, John Hartigan has a line in the movie that I think encapsulates it well, and he just says, "Death is just like life in Sin City. It always wins."
Right.
So I want to stay away from that place.
Yeah.
But I'm like you. It was okay. I don't think it's as bad as a lot of critics make it out to be, but it's not nearly as fun or as engaging as the first film. So I'm kind of like in the C plus B minus range for me. So, but anyway, we will have a full review of this up on our site soon. You can be sure to go and check that out at InSessionFilm.com.
Well, if you agree or disagree with our takes on this film here, let us know. Comment over on Facebook at facebook.com/InSessionFilm or tweet us at InSessionFilm as well. Leave us a comment on our Google Plus page or on Letterboxd. Usernames on both of those are InSessionFilm. And, of course, you can always email us at InSessionFilm@gmail.com.
All right, the InSession Film Top 3 is next, and we'll be discussing our top 3 movie dames. She's from Legal, and she's potentially a very expensive sexual harassment lawsuit.
I want one.
We'll discuss them all next. We'll be right back. The InSession Film Top 3 is brought to you by the First Time Watchers podcast. And while Sin City may be a dangerous place that devours you, the First Time Watchers guys absolutely will not, and it's a place you definitely want to be. They're fantastic, and like Marv, they go around and they kick some ass. They're a great supporter of our show. They're an awesome podcast, as I mentioned, and it's hosted by Tim, Walter, and Hermano. And they really know their movies. These guys are fantastic. What's unique about their show is they get together every week. They pick out a movie that they've never seen before, and then they get together and discuss it on their show, as well as movie trailers and other films that they've seen recently, and whether they would recommend them to you or not. At the end of the show, they also do special movie recommendations that you'll definitely want to check out as well. They're really, really good at what they do. The show is really fluid, it's easy to listen to, and I promise you're going to have a lot of fun with them. So, where can you find them? And that is a great question you can ask. Well, there's a couple ways you can do that. Go to firsttimewatchers.blogspot.com. You can also hit them up on Twitter at First Time Watchers, and also just search them on Facebook, First Time Watchers. Go subscribe to them on iTunes, leave them a review, and let them know that we sent you to them. I promise you're not going to regret it. It's absolutely worth your time. Again, it's awesome. Go check them out. First Time Watchers. You're listening to the InSession Film Podcast. This is episode 79. And now we're going to be going over our top 3 movie dames. And again, for all of us here, I did kind of reduce that down to just comic book movies and just action movies. So we're kind of narrowing the field a little bit, although there's still a lot to choose from there. Blake, did you have any other criteria that you looked at to pick your list?
Not a whole lot here. We're talking about, mostly comic book or action movies and fantasy movies kind of roll into the same there, I think, anyway.
Sure.
So yeah. I'm kind of pretty much on the same page with you here.
Yeah, I didn't really look at a ton of other criteria. Obviously, if there's action in any way, I kind of counted that. Obviously, comic book movies from any comic, not just superhero comics.
Right.
And I also looked at To Kill For in a couple different ways. It wasn't just for beauty or for looks, but it was there was a variation there.
Right.
And I'll explain that further once we get to the picks.
No, that's fine.
All right. So that being said, Blake, what is your number 3?
Okay. Well, all 3 of mine on here are not necessarily characters, but actresses, actually. And then both of them, actually all 3 of them, sorry, have been in a couple of films that fit this category anyway, as far as
sure,
we've narrowed it down. So number 3 for me is Robin Wright Penn from The Princess Bride.
Okay, nice.
As Buttercup.
Yeah.
Of course, she was actually also in, she was Jenny in Forrest Gump as well. One of her her 2 biggest roles ever, pretty much. And there was some action in that here, but I'm thinking mostly, action fantasy, The Princess Bride here. Still one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
And you think
great.
about what the character went through in that film to find her and get back with her and everything like that, and then come on, Columbo and Fred Savage at the same time in there too. Everything about that movie is still one of my favorites, but her that character there, the way that she draws people to her, is definitely a reason for me to put her in my top 3.
Very nice. Yeah, that's a very solid pick. Very good stuff. For my number 3, I actually have 2 choices because I couldn't decide between them, and I wanted to kind of talk about both of them, so I'm kind of cheating here. But I will label them as one, and then I'm going to kind of break them both down. But I'm going to just kind of call them The French Connection, and not the movie, but because both of these are based off of French comics. And so the first one I'm going to talk about is Barbarella, which was, I think, the 1968 movie, I think.
Something like that.
Starring Jane Fonda. Mm-hmm. This is a really crazy film. It's definitely not for everyone. It's kind of become this cult classic, but I really like it. I think it's a lot of fun. Jane Fonda is just gorgeous in the film. I felt like she's definitely a character that I want to be around. And I love my wife, don't get me wrong, but if we're talking about dames with To Kill For, this is one that's not only gorgeous, but she's very sexual at the same time. So if we're going to be talking about this kind of stuff, that's definitely a character that I think that I would like to pursue, or I would kill for. Like I would definitely do something for that character. So and it's one heck of a journey. I feel like she just kind of goes on this crazy adventure. So I would like to be a part of that in some way. So it's a fun movie for me anyway. And my other one is perhaps a little bit of a surprising choice at first, but this is a character that I absolutely fell in love with, and it is Adele from the movie Blue is the Warmest Color that came out last year, which is played by actress Adele Exarchopoulos. And I fell in love with her from the moment I saw her. I feel like when we reviewed that on the show last year, I think one of the first things I said was, if I wasn't marrying my wife, that's who I'd want to marry.
Wow.
I fell in love with her in this movie. She's just so endearing and gorgeous. And what's amazing is I feel like she's got a connectability about her that to me was just so authentic and felt so genuine to me. When you talk about what it means to fall in love with someone, that journey of falling in love with them, the intimacy that can create, and a lot of the times also the breakup that can come along with that. I mean, in a lot of our lives, we have many relationships that are deep, that are full of love, but then ultimately they don't work out. And we see that journey in this film, and I was fully engaged with it. And I love Adele Exarchopoulos. It was 3 hours long. It didn't feel that way. And at the end of the movie, I just wanted more. Like, I just wanted to spend more time with that girl and just kind of give her a hug and kind of keep her close. But I love that character, so I would definitely do anything for her. So she's definitely my number 3.
Yeah, I can tell you're just you're oozing over here right now. Like your description was 3 hours long, and it did feel like it.
I'm so sorry.
Down, Simba.
I love that movie, and I love her in it. It's very
Yes,
stuff.
you do.
All right, Blake, what is your number 2?
Number 2 is an actress that has been in, at least a number of films, but 3 that I think of that I rate right now. The 3 films being Pearl Harbor, Armageddon, and The Incredible Hulk. Liv Tyler.
Very nice.
As much as I hate Aerosmith, the one good thing that Steven Tyler has made is Liv Tyler. That shit. I used to have a pretty big thing for Liv back in the day. I'm just saying. But especially we're talking about being that kind of damsel in distress and a couple things there. Especially, I thought compared to the first version of the we saw the Hulk on film here when it was Jennifer Connelly was terrible as Betty Ross, and I thought Liv Tyler really brought a whole lot more likability and everything to that role there, and was a lot better actress in the way that she portrayed that character, I think too. Which you don't often hear, somebody say that they felt Liv Tyler was a better actress than Jennifer Connelly. At least in that role there anyway. I know there are plenty of others out there. I mean, she was in The Lord of the Rings as well. Yep. So if you want to talk about those kind of, in those kind of films anyway, definitely a big fan of Liv Tyler.
No, that's a solid choice.
Yeah, and just showing in case you know that she happens to hear this, I am available.
There you go.
I'm just saying.
Liv Tyler, contact us, InSessionFilm@gmail.com.
No.
We'll hook you up with
the fact that you were number 2 on my list probably isn't helping me any.
Hey, it's still high, though. It's still
moving
good.
on.
Moving on. For my number 2, I'm moving away from kind of the visual beauty aspects of things.
Do you have 3 people tied for this role?
No.
Okay.
No. I only had 2.
You actually have a top 8 for JD today.
Only one person here. And this is different in terms of the visual aspects, as I said. But rather, this is a woman that I'd like to work for. This is a woman that is strong and someone that I find very endearing. And this is the character of M from the James Bond movies. And obviously, this is the Judi Dench version of this. There's several others, but she's obviously the only other female M character.
That's funny because she actually is
a dame.
Dame Judi Dench, yeah.
So she's an actual dame.
I see what you did there.
You see what I did? But I think she's amazing. Like I said, she's just really likable. You can't help but love her. Although she's very honest and she's not afraid to tell you what she thinks. And she's not afraid to put you in dangerous situations. But at the same time, she's just someone that you really care for. She's someone you like working for. And I would do anything for that character. And as James Bond in those movies, he pretty much does, and he does a lot of killing for.
Yeah.
So, and I would do the same thing. I think she's just a really fun character that I think holds the pedestal really well for those films.
Wow, that's a very interesting pick.
Yeah.
I don't not like it.
There you go.
That's just I did not see that one coming. All right.
There you go. All right, well, what do you got at number one?
Number one for me, and this is just, I don't know. I there's some women out there and actresses that not like totally obscure. I don't want to say that because she's been in a few big budget films out here, but not like a top billed actress. But every time that I see her on film, I just kind of like, I get that little, schoolboy, lovey-dovey feeling. It's like, there's just something that I can't take my eyes away. And the way that she plays her characters, again, is so very endearing and such that little, like, girl next door sweetheart type thing as well. But the two films that I can think of that would kind of work in here were both Mission Impossible 3 and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Michelle Monaghan.
Yeah, that's a great choice.
I am absolutely in love with her.
Oh, Harry.
Huh?
So long ago. Didn't really turn out the way we hoped, did it?
I mean, I guess if I racked my brain, I could think of worse places to be.
Is that so, Whitey?
Whitey? He's calling me a knight?
Me, yeah. Except for the boner. It's not too nightly.
No. Hell, it isn't. Actually, it's nightly in most mornings. Fuck it. I'm not a knight. I'm sorry.
What?
Yeah, I'm thinking...
Harry?
I'm going nuts, so I think maybe the couch is good.
Stop. Harry,
The couch is
God.
good, or I can just keep drinking until it goes away.
Harry, if you're at all uncomfortable, I am more than happy to do something.
Oh, for Christ's sake, no.
Why
No.
not?
I don't want you to offer it as
Jesus,
like,
you're
this
so-
is not one of those, like, it's a courtesy freebie.
you're so
I don't want,
anal.
like, the backup. Let me just, give you a hand here as a kind of, like, default backup thing.
And everything as far as the way she portrays herself on film, her characteristics, her mannerisms and everything like that. It's just, I can't like, it's like, that's the person that I think that you think of that they walk into a room and everybody looks and everybody just wants to be around there. It's just like, and they don't, it seems like she never in any portrayal or anything like that, or even in interviews and whatnot, doesn't like think that highly of herself, and she's just kind of a regular person in a way.
Sure.
But there's just that characteristic. There's something about her that I literally can't pull myself away from.
Now, that's a really solid choice. In fact, when I threw the question out on Twitter, that was one of the responses I got was that. I mean, I think she's an amazing actress as well, and I would pick her for all the reasons you did too. That's a good honorable mention for me. For my number one, I guess to set it up, when I look back at the other, I guess, three that I picked, Barbarella is fun and adventurous. Adele in Blue is the Warmest Color is very intimate, and so that's why I would go with that. Obviously, Judi Dench is,
Judi Dench is the hot one.
No, Judi Dench is the boss you would want to work for. She's just awesome. My number one is very superficial. I'm going with this just because of her looks and because I think she's awesome. And I'm also going with Liv Tyler, but specifically Arwen from Lord of the Rings.
Arwen. Tolenilu. Ichaer gwannar navalannos sibado no kirar.
I have made my choice.
He is not coming back. Why do you linger here when there is no hope?
There is still hope.
She's the hottest elf ever. Let's just put that out there right now. And every time she's on screen, I just feel like I'm transcended. Like I'm just like in awe. Like my mouth is just kind of dropping. And even though she doesn't have as much to do as a lot of the other characters, to me, she's just jaw dropping. And I think she's awesome. And she's also willing to sacrifice her mortality to be with you. So who wouldn't want to kill for that, right? So that's why she's my number one. She's
Right.
awesome.
I find myself when she's on screen there, I kind of find myself in that mode like Leonard from The Big Bang Theory, where I just kind of get my head tilted to the side, just kind of like smiling and just like whatever you say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, any other honorable mentions?
Oh, they're all out there, man. I mean, we could go whether it's superficial or whether it's some of the other characteristics we've talked about here. There's dozens and dozens, and I could spend all day talking about hot movie chicks. I mean, honestly,
Sure.
I mean, there's not enough time in the day for us to have that conversation, I don't think.
No, that's very true. I honestly didn't think of a whole lot of honorable mentions too, just because there is a ton out there,
Right.
and because there's like a wide variety that you could choose from. I mean, it could go from anywhere from other characters like M and James Bond to Ellen Ripley to Black Widow to, it just depends on what it is that you like and what you want to. It's also very specific and individual, because your taste may be different than my taste, may be different than Brendan's taste or whoever. So,
Right.
So for that reason, I actually didn't include a whole lot of honorable mentions either. So,
Well, everybody out there, let us know how your picks stack up against ours. You can always get a hold of us on Facebook again here, facebook.com/InSessionFilm. Email us, InSessionFilm@gmail.com here. We're all over the internets, you know.
absolutely, definitely hit us up. All right, well, let's talk about the poll question before we move on to the next segment. And for the poll question this week, I asked, how do you think Sin City: A Dame to Kill For will be received 9 years after the first? And the responses I put out there was, it will be better, it will be the same, it will be worse, I've lost interest over time, or I've never been interested in these films to begin with. And winning with 37% of the vote was, I have lost interest over time, but not far behind it with 32% was, it will be worse. And I would say that was the case, like both of those, I think, was the case for me.
Yeah. I mean, by the time it's finally coming out, I mean, I was interested again. I was like, oh, yeah, I've been reading about this for years. I've been talking about it. I remember all the way back when they first announced they were going to make it. It was supposed to be Angelina Jolie.
Yeah.
Forever ago. So, I mean, I was interested again. Obviously, I mean, whether I was doing this or not, I wanted to go see it. Now, I didn't necessarily want to go pay $14 to watch it in 3D XD on a matinee.
And you didn't even mention that in our discussion.
I know.
What was that like? What was it? 3D just
Absolutely
terrible?
pointless.
Yeah.
No, but it was absolutely pointless. There was nothing to throw it out on the. I mean. No, it was just a cash grab. There's literally no reason for that here. I mean, a couple of scenes in the car chases and whatnot, but nothing really, came out in 3D like it really you would expect in a 3D movie. Nope.
Yeah, and I would say most of the conversation I had online with people over the last week was the loss of interest over time. I would say that was the majority of people I talked to was, whether they liked the first one or not, it was just, it's been 9 years. I'm not sure if I'm interested that much. And in doing research for that poll question too, I was looking at a bunch of other films that have done this, and I would say more times than not, I mean, I don't have exact numbers, but more times than not, when there are sequels that have a huge gap of time like that, they're just not very good. They're not well received. And, there's a few here and there that have definitely hit the mark. Toy Story 3 is a great example, but not, I would say, though, the vast majority is very much the opposite.
Yeah, sequels and reboots are two very different beasts when it comes to that kind of a length of time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Batman. I mean, I get 10 years down from the road from here. If Christian Bale in his old age at that point says he wants to get back together with Chris Nolan and make another movie in that original Dark Knight trilogy timeline there, then sure, people are going to go right for it. But it's not the same kind of idea here.
Yeah.
And
it would have been, I think, a very different story, even if this movie was the exact same. Mm-hmm. If it came out 2 years after the first, I still think it'd be very different.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
So, yeah, it's just kind of a disappointment. But, we'll see, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again when we have Ghostbusters 3 and Independence Day 2 coming out in the next few years.
No, see, I don't even want to talk about that because, no, it's not Ghostbusters 3 anymore. It's going to be complete.
I know.
I just, I don't want to even get into it. It's going to be a complete reboot with chick characters. No.
Yeah, but anyway.
No.
As for our poll question.
No.
I feel you. Man. For the poll question next week, I don't have a specific question, but it is going to relate to our favorite films or the films that we're looking forward to the most that are coming out later this fall. And that'll be our top 3 segment next week. So be sure to be on the lookout for that.
All right. Up next, we will finish off by talking about some films that JD's got to see this week because I have been way too busy. Stick around. We'll be right back.
All right, guys, just want to pause for a second to say a quick thank you to those that are supporting the show. If you want to help us, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can just go to our bonus content tab on our website. And while they are free to listen to, we do encourage and appreciate a small donation of 99 cents. And if you could just click on that bonus content tab, all the information is there on how you can donate and download those. They're a lot of fun. So definitely go and check that out. We also have a donate per show platform on patreon.com where you can sign up to donate $1 per show, $2 per show, whatever it is you want to do. And there's some free gifts that come along with that. We really appreciate it. And again, you can go and check all that information out at InSessionFilm.com/donate. And as mentioned up at the top of the show, we are sponsored by Audible.com. If you just go to audibletrial.com/InSessionFilm and sign up, you can get a free 30-day trial and a free audiobook just for signing up. And they have a ton of really great stuff up there that you definitely want to go and check out. So thanks to those that are supporting us. We really, really appreciate it.
Hi, this is Greg.
This is Chuck.
And this is Dan. And we are Talking in Circles.
Because the world needs another podcast, we are here as Geekcast Radio's newest edition.
And as the title says, each week we get lost in conversation about a wide range of topics, including movies, comics, games, art, TV, and even occasionally sports.
We play games and discuss pivotal topics like who would win in a fight, the Kool-Aid Man or Tony the Tiger, and examine the hot-button issues of the world of geekdom.
We keep things fresh by taking timeless topics in new directions.
We are simply three friends having a fun time talking about life's most fascinating foibles.
Stay connected with us every Tuesday on iTunes or at geekcastradio.com.
You're listening to the InSession Film Podcast. This is episode 79, and here Blake and I, maybe mostly just I, will talk about films we got to see over the last week. But I guess for the sake of continuity, Blake, I'll toss it to you first. Did you get to see anything this week?
Well, JD. Well, I did, of course, obviously went and wasted $14 for a XD 3D viewing of Sin City. And then I watched something else last week, but I don't remember what it was now. That's that bad. Like, apparently I didn't enjoy myself.
Apparently.
So, I honestly, I've had so much going on with work here in the past week and so, and other things that I just really haven't.
Have you got to see Boyhood yet?
I have not yet. I need to.
Definitely want to go check that out.
I know.
So
I need to, but I don't want to sit here and talk about it for 2 hours like you guys did before.
You don't have to.
No, I know. I definitely need to, and I want to.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of me finding the time to, honestly. So,
sure.
So yeah, that was my week.
Very good stuff. Well, I got to see quite a few more.
I'm going to go ahead and set the microphone down for a second here.
No. I guess the first one to start off the week is I did get to watch the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I wanted to show my wife because she had never seen them. But she did go with us to see the new one.
Was you showing it to her to show her how much better it was than?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, good.
So,
all right. Outstanding.
Which she didn't necessarily have the appreciation for.
Come on,
like
man. Elias Koteas is Casey Jones. Come on, man.
Yeah, it was great
that
stuff.
was perfect.
So, I mean, when I rewatched it, I could understand why they wanted to redo it because the suits are outdated and they're very cheesy nowadays, but this version is still so much more coherent.
Well,
and
the story is so much better.
Yeah, it is. And it's much more personal, I think, and more intense. Like, there's a really intimate scene between Splinter and Raphael that is really potent. I think it's really good. And you just don't get that in the new one at all. And the whole house sequence when they're like at April O'Neil's barn, like,
when they're all recovering and everything. Yeah, that really stands out to me still to this day. When I think about that movie, that's one of two things that I think about. Like, well, that sequence there, and then the idea that the human characters in the original one were so much more powerful and potent
I agree.
than in this one here. And not necessarily even the April character, but like, the little kid who gets recruited into the Foot Clan and whatnot.
Sure. Yeah.
That's a real serious kind of thing. Then we're talking about early 90s gang violence and stuff like that.
Sure.
It was right for the time as well. But I think that still, if you break it down, there's some really cheesy stuff in there. But I think as an overall film, I would hands down I'd watch it 20 times over.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, I could understand why they want to redo it, but the remake was so bad.
Oh yeah,
it was terrible. Yeah, but I agree. And the final sequence with the Shredder is way more intense. Way more exciting than the new one. So.
Absolutely.
Well, going off of that, I also rewatched Terrence Malick's The Thin Red Line. I'm trying to get caught up or rewatch some World War II movies. I've been kind of in this World War II kick in anticipation for Fury coming out this fall, which I'm sure I will talk about next week on the show. And so I gave this one a rewatch because I haven't watched it in quite a long time. And I know it's not for everybody and not everyone really likes this film, but I really love this film. It's definitely up there as far as my top war movies of all time. The cinematography is obviously gorgeous. It's Terrence Malick here. But what I really like about this one is a lot of war films will build suspense or build up the thrill of the fight. And while there is some of that here, this is more about the heart and emotions that go into that. And while the storytelling is a little bit disjointed at times, I still think it was really well done, and I was able to fully engage with the characters. And there's a review for this film from Richard Corliss from Time Magazine, and he kind of, in his review, he said, while others are about plot truth, this one was more about emotional truth. And I think that says it perfectly about how I feel about this movie. Despite the schizophrenic storytelling, I think it was amazing. I loved it. It always went back to the heart of the matter. And in those kinds of situations, there's going to be a lot of emotions being tossed around. And I thought Terrence Malick did a great job of it. So, and all the cameos in that movie, they were never distracting for me. I thought they were more fun than distracting. But I don't know. Have you seen that one, Blake?
It's been a long time, and I would have to rewatch it to really be able to discuss it properly. But I have seen it. Yeah,
I don't blame you. But I also watched Get On Up this week. It's a new film starring Chadwick Boseman. This is the James Brown movie, and I think Chadwick Boseman does an amazing job as James Brown. He's phenomenal. I think he's really good, but the story is a bit disjointed, and it's done in a distracting way for me. Because we were bouncing around too much from his early childhood to sort of more teen years to present time, and it's kind of going back and forth in a way that wasn't very fluid and didn't really work for me. But as far as music biopics go, I don't think this is one of the worst. I think it's decently okay. It's still a good watch, perhaps maybe 20 minutes too long, but the acting is phenomenal. The music's really great if you like James Brown music. And there's some really good elements going on. As far as if I was going to compare it to like Jersey Boys from earlier this year, I would take this easily over Jersey Boys.
Really?
So it's a decent watch. I guess if I was going to grade it, it'd probably be like a B-, somewhere in that range.
Good.
I also went and rewatched The First Sin City in preparation for A Dame to Kill For. I won't go into this a whole lot since we sort of talked about it earlier in the show, but I really like it. The cinematography was very creative and unique for its time. I thought the story was a lot more fun and engaging. I thought the John Hardigan stuff with Nancy was great. I really liked Marv in the first one too. I thought he was badass. And overall, it just had much more potency to it than A Dame to Kill For. And then I also got to watch Woody Allen's latest, Magic in the Moonlight. And I won't go into this a ton because we're going to talk about this on next week's Extra Film segment. But I'll say the first hour of this movie is really good. I really love the cinematography. It's gorgeously shot. There's a lot of backdrops from Europe. There's a lot of mountain ranges that they're showing, sunsets, different things like that. I really love the 1920s aesthetic. I think is great. Of course, the music definitely fits that tone in a very Woody Allen-like way. All of that is great, and I think Colin Firth and Emma Stone are fantastic. I think their chemistry is really good. But after about an hour or so, there's a turn that happens that is very sudden. It felt very manufactured and just didn't quite work for me. And the middle of the movie was just very dull and kind of boring and kind of lost its luster a little bit. But the end kind of picked up a little bit, and I really like that. But again, I'll explain more of that on this week's Extra Film. But overall, while it's not Woody Allen's worst movie, it's certainly far from his best as well. So a lot of people have said that, but I'm perfectly in that boat. I completely agree with that. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I did watch Sin City 2, Dame to Kill For, and I also rewatched Barbarella in preparation for our top 3 segment. And the fun thing about watching Barbarella, and I didn't really notice this until I kind of looked it up, but and I'm not sure why, but the band Duran Duran got their name from the character in the movie.
Really?
But they just dropped the D at the end and went Duran Duran, which is spelled the exact same way as my name. And I didn't know that, but I thought that was kind of a fascinating piece of trivia.
Wow.
So there you go, in case you didn't know.
That's weird.
Yeah. But anyway, that is all I got to see this week. Blake, thanks for being here, man. It's good to have you on this week and having a fun discussion about Sin City. And
right. I mean, I'm definitely glad to be back here. I was hoping for more with the film and have more to discuss here, but
sure.
That happens sometimes.
Yeah, it does. I'm not sure what we're going to do next week on the show. There's not really a whole lot of big releases. I think The November Man is one of the bigger releases, but I'm not really interested in seeing that movie a ton, so
yeah,
kind of have to discuss that one a little bit. But
yeah, especially since I don't want to run the risk of having to go pay $14 2 weeks in a row.
Exactly.
That movie definitely interests me a whole lot less.
Yeah. We'll figure it out, though, but that should do it for this week's show. Be sure to go and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/InSessionFilm. You can follow us on Twitter at InSessionFilm and on Google Plus as well. Also, go and check out our new videos on YouTube. With our podcast, I've done something a little bit new where you can subscribe on iTunes and all that sort of stuff, but our shows, our full-length shows, are now up on our YouTube channel as well. So if you have an Android device, or if it's just easier for you to listen on YouTube at work or wherever in the office, you can definitely go and check that out. Just search InSession Film and you'll find us there. And you can also sign up for our monthly newsletter. You can do that on Facebook by clicking the newsletter tab, or on our site at InSessionFilm.com/newsletter.
Of course, all of our reviews are up on the website as well as on Letterboxd, so check us out over there, letterboxd.com/InSessionFilm. We do try to respond to every piece of email we get, so shoot us a message over there, InSessionFilm@gmail.com. Be sure that you subscribe to us on iTunes and on Stitcher. While you're over there on iTunes, please do leave us a review. We love that free marketing, we do. And make sure, check us out here on our website if you want to listen to the Listen Now page there. That is InSessionFilm.com/listen-now.
And as mentioned earlier, the InSession Film Podcast is supported by our super awesome listeners like you. Once again, if you want to help us, just go to our site at InSessionFilm.com, click on our bonus content tab in the main menu, and you can hear all of our bonus content for just a small donation of 99 cents. Or you can just go to InSessionFilm.com/donate, and you'll see a bunch of information there on how you can help us in other ways. And you can hear everything we do on our mobile app, whether it's these main shows, our extra film shows, or our bonus content. All of that is up on the app for just a one-time fee of $1.99. And you can find that app on the Amazon Market for Android devices, the Windows 8 phone store for Windows devices, and the Podcast Box app for iOS devices. And all those details are on the site at InSessionFilm.com/apps. Before we get out of here, Blake, any final thoughts on anything, man?
Well, again, it was nice to see Josh Brolin doing something decent for a change that I didn't hate compared to the last few things I've seen him in.
Sure.
Discounting, of course, his appearance in Guardians. But not really here. I was kind of let down here. I was really actually hoping for better with this. Not a whole lot more to say about it than that here. And again, I guess we got a couple of slow weeks ahead of us here. I'm anxious to see what I'm going to have to watch next week.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to figuring out what that's going to be like. I do know that for our top 3 next week, we're going to do our top 3 fall films, or the films that we're anticipating the most for the fall.
Sure.
And I'm very excited for that. I have my list is narrowed down to about 15. So
wow, good.
I'll try to get it down to 3 by next week. So I do look forward to that. And also on next week's show, I've been trying to get these guys for a while now, but I'm finally going to get the Q Film Cast back on the show. It's been a while since they've been here, but I'm pretty excited that they're going to be here as well. So anyway, thanks for listening, everyone. As I mentioned, be sure to be on the lookout for this week's extra film, where we're going to talk about Magic in the Moonlight, the latest from Woody Allen. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. Let us know what you guys think about Sin City 2, A Dame to Kill For. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you guys next time on the InSession Film Podcast. Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast extra film segment. Oh God, I was so used to this last Friday,
Man,
oh man,
gone for a couple weeks and you can't even talk anymore.
I know. Well, this last week for our extra film, we discussed Boyhood, and it was the longest extra film we've ever had. It was an hour and like 27 minutes.
It's a whole
show. It was a main show. Yeah, we had a lot to talk about.
It's extra film.
It is.
You have to pay for that.
Yeah, it was really long. It was a lot of fun though. Okay, let's do this again. For the entire version of our podcast, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or on Stitcher, or check us out online at InSessionFilm.com.